Now in the underpainting, I pulled this shape out a little bit. And I might need to angle it and pull it out that way. I think Mr. John Singer Sargent said this all the time, or maybe he said it once. I don't know. But one of his quotes is that a portrait is something, or there's a little bit, or it's a little bit off in the mouth, and that, yeah, that's going to be the case here. But oh well, we can correct it. No worries. I'm just adding a little bit of color, very lightly, very thin. Alright, so now we'll address the issue with the mouth. So if you ever find yourself at this position, and you see that, oh, something's going on with the mouth, if you're doing a commission and they're like, something's up with the mouth, don't worry. This happens to everyone. So let's see. What do we do to fix this? So we're going to move this shape over a little bit more over here, thus kind of correcting this angle. So moving that shape over a little bit. Now with a little bit of cadmium red, we're going to mix into the middle tone region of the palette, and we're going to start to add the color. So now we're going to be painting a little bit more opaque. And certain areas have different local colors. So the lips, for instance, will have a different local color than the rest of the flesh tone, but I guess that's obvious. So anyway, I'm going to move this over. Yep, move this over here. So yep, you're seeing the real life struggles of a portrait artist, or an artist in general. I mean, come on, we all go through these things. And I personally like it. I'm going to use a little bit of flake white. I personally like that moment of knowing that I'm wrong and then correcting it. I mean, it doesn't mean that I want to be pointed out each time that, hey, the mouth is off, hey, the eyes are off, hey, the nose is off, hey, everything's off. It's just that, I don't know, these moments while painting where I'm really focused, I don't know, it's a nice thing to know that you've been wrong, and a glimpse of inspiration, because you then know how to correct it and to move forward. So let's see. Now that we took that shape and we moved it up, I think that's getting a little bit better. But now we have to go ahead and adjust all the other shapes accordingly. So again, there's a little bit of light over here. Who knows? In the next layer, I might have to move it again. But that's the way it is. It's all about problem solving. And if everything worked out perfectly, I mean, you already know what I'm going to say, right? If everything always worked out so perfectly, why would we even do this? You know, like every good... Now see, I'm going to talk about things I don't know. Now, I suppose, every good story kind of needs a villain, right? A villain to be defeated, a villain to overcome. I don't know. I don't know where I'm getting with that, but if everything went perfectly with the portrait painting, I would honestly get bored. If everything went if everything went well first try every time, I would get bored. So a little bit of light on the lips, and again, I'm not trying to go for the final color. but just adding a few more value changes on the lips should make this a little bit more volumetric. So I'm still going rather soft with my edges, but certain areas I did sharpen. I sharpened that area. I sharpened this area. That's about it. I mean, everything else is still pretty soft. I know I still have to put a little bit of color for the eyes, but let's go ahead and just keep working at this. Now you're seeing the real life stuff, unfiltered. In the end of this, those of you that will watch the entire development of this painting, you'll know this painting was probably the story of overcoming hundreds of problems. Problem solving. But it's fun. Honestly, it's fun. Let go of any kind of pride. I feel like pride is always the thing that gets in the way. Like, I've painted hundreds of portraits. How am I still getting the angle of the mouth wrong? That's the wrong kind of attitude. Instead, tell yourself, I've painted hundreds of portraits. I got the mouth wrong. That means I know how to fix it. Tell yourself that. All right, so let's see. A little more dark over here. So it's starting to look a little closer. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. So a little darker over here. So I'm still using a vertical. And I think what's going on now is that I'm missing some values here. Sometimes when you add more values in, it helps you see the shapes a little bit more clearly. Not always, but oftentimes it helps. So we're going to raise this value a little more. And we're also kind of sharpening that edge as a consequence, which is okay. You know how many times we've moved this mouth? It's kind of funny to think about it. The mouth really isn't that difficult to move, nor is the nose, and even the eyes. You saw me, I think on Monday was, the video I uploaded was just me with the transfer drawing fixing one of these eyes. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit of a darker shape beneath the accent. So the accent for the lips. So remember when we used the burnt umber, I said that when we transition to the color, we'll be able to have yet another range of value. And that's certainly the case, you'll see now. So that was the darkest that the burnt umber could go, like somewhere over here. So now with a little bit of Alizarin permanent ultramarine blue mixed into this little dark region of the palette. Wait for it. See how much darker we can go now? So it gives us an extra set of values to continue to develop our forms. Isn't that neat? As opposed to starting with the entire value range from the get-go. We did the best that we could with the compressed value range, and now we're going to make the value transitions much stronger by having a whole new set of values. So you can see how dark that is. in comparison to the corner of the mouth. So again, we're just focusing on the values for now, and we'll come back for the second color pass and really start to get some advanced color into the portrait. And while we're at it, the same thing is going to happen with the nostril. So I'm going to take basically the same value carefully now. I'm going to tint it a little bit warmer, so I'm going to use a little more alizarin. A little bit warmer. This is going to push down right over there. I just used the fan brush to eliminate some glare. So now I'm going to basically be retouching my darkest darks. So with the alizarin permanent again, ultramarine blue, tiny bit of ivory black, mixing onto this darker region of the palette, making sure that I don't use straight black. Now then, the eyes are very dark. See that? Before we had the darkest we could get, remember? With the underpainting, and now look how much darker we can go. Neat, isn't it? Darker over here. That's just, that always amazes me whenever I see how much darker I can go in the color pass. It's like, I don't know, it's like upgrading your car or something. You're like, wow, or upgrading like the motor in your car or something, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going so fast, and then you upgrade it or something. Now I don't really have an expensive car or anything like that, but I imagine from all the video games I've played in the past, when you unlock the next level of, I don't know, the next level of horsepower or something in your video game, and then you can just go that much faster, it's pretty neat. And it's like that with the value range. So right over here, so it's going to get darker. But carefully now. Not that much darker down here. See that? The extra value range we have. So we're going darker than we could with the burnt umber, but not as dark as we did with the accents. Pretty neat. So let's see. Even a little darker there. I might have went too far, so I'm going to go ahead and take that out with my finger, which I don't recommend doing, but you're seeing the real life stuff. So I don't want to hide anything from you. Sometimes I use my fingers to correct things. Now what I need is just a clean brush. There we go. So for the light of the eye, as most of you know, the combination is very simple. Just basically black and white and a little bit of flesh tone. Just taking a little bit of flesh tone from the palette. So remember, the eyes, the white of the eyes, the sclera is not black. Of course, I always say that. But in this case, you can really see that. You can really see that this value is rather dark. And I really want to make sure that the edge is soft. This edge in particular. I need that edge to be very soft. Just going to make this darker now. So with the Alizarin permanent, burnt umber, ivory black, we're going to push this dark even more. So that's pretty close for the color of the sclera. So let's go ahead and add the light on the other side. There's a little glimpse of light. I don't know, I feel like that color is fine, but just a little glimpse of light. Don't be too bright. Okay, that might be too bright. A little bit of flesh tone. All right, so now with the other side, again, I'm going to be very cautious with these values. So I'm actually going to darken the iris a little bit. Add a little bit of alizarin permanent for that. So even that's still not the darkest I can go, which is wonderful. Which is what I want. And now I'm going to go in with the black and white. That is ivory black, flake white. You could use titanium too, just use very little titanium. So that color is too blue. So let's go ahead and just, honestly, I'm just taking right from the flesh tones. So again, I'm going to try to reduce the glare with the fan brush. Now, something's going on with this eye. There's always something up with this eye. So, gotta make sure that I don't lose my drawing, especially with the color. But if we do lose our drawing at this stage, we'll be fine. We can easily just take the paint right off with a rag and some of our mineral spirits, or in my case, the citrus brush cleaner. The underpainting layer is almost like a checkpoint. I keep referring to video games. It's like a checkpoint in a video game. It's like a save point. Fan brush to eliminate some glare. So I'm going to use the darker dark again. Try to push this shape out a little bit. So we need a little more color for the eyelid, but we can put that in the next layer. Talking about the color on here, I don't think I need it just yet. I think what's going on is I'm missing still this dark shape here. So burnt umber, ultramarine blue. Use the fan brush again. So a little bit of the ivory black, flake white. So like I said earlier, we're going to push the value range now. So I'm going to use burnt umber, ultramarine blue, a little bit of alizarin permanent. And I'm going to thin out the paint just a little bit. with the citrus essence thinner. A little more burnt umber. So I'm going to use a little bit more burnt umber just because I know burnt umber is a fast dryer. And I'm really hoping that this layer will be dry by tomorrow. So let's see. I think that value is about good. So what I'm going to do is let some areas be a little... So I want to let the underpainting show in some areas. I just want this to kind of stand in for some of the shapes for the hair. But we'll address more of that in the next layer. Right now I'm just trying to make this a little bit darker. A little more ultramarine blue. So it's getting a little too warm with the burnt umber. But let's remember that we're just trying to prioritize the values and still introducing some color. Alright, so let's go ahead and fill in the rest of this now. So let's not forget this all-important edge that I was talking about before. So the edge between the hairline and the forehead. So I'm just taking from the darker middle tone region of the palette just to soften that. I'm going to use my fan brush. You know what? I probably have to use the fan brush for the hair anyway, because I'm sure it's glaring. I don't want too much of a glare. Alright, so I'm going to grab a clean brush, or at least a mostly clean brush, and address this edge. So in terms of edge quality, in the second pass, we do want to focus on the edge a little bit more, the edges a little bit more. So this edge we want to be really soft as the hair is meeting the forehead. It's a very, very soft edge. Just a light touch to soften. Very, very light. And we still want the edges to be rather soft. But again, like I said before, I did sharpen some edges this time, such as this one and this one. And soften this a little bit. So that's a little better. So the next thing we want to address is the color of the cast shadow. And I don't want to do too much to it. I know that it needs to be darker in value. So let's use burnt umber, sap green. Not too much sap green though. So that's why I'm using the burnt umber. I know it needs to get a little cooler. And again, I'm going to try and flatten out the shadows and add the reflected light as more of a hue change in the second color pass. So let's see if that value that's about alright. Too green? Yeah, probably too green. So back to the burnt umber, a tiny bit of ultramarine blue. It's a little better. And I really want the transparencies to show, especially in the shadow. I really want all the layers to show through. I don't know, I just like the way that that looks. Being able to see the layers underneath. Gotta be careful not to lose the boundary of light and dark. But again, that's the useful thing about the monochromatic underpainting, is that it will always show through, and it's kind of there as a protective measure for us. It's a little better. Again, just trying to flatten it out. Now I'm going to take that clean brush that I was using earlier and just take it to the shadows, all the shadows. Just going to unify them. Not quite glazing, but we are still building through the transparencies. Semi-transparent applications of paint. So over here, the eyebrows are pretty dark on their own. I don't know if I want to make them any darker. Probably will. So let's go into this dark very carefully. Just add a thin little touch to the eyebrows. Very tiny. So for the eyebrows, the color of the eyebrows, in this situation, a good combination is ultramarine blue, tiny bit of burnt umber. And if you have raw umber works too. Maybe with a touch of yellow ochre, since raw umber is rather cold. At least the one that I had before. Still trying to keep these edges pretty soft. I'm very far away from the painting. I'm about a little more than an arm's length away, and that's to gain objectivity, but at the same time I don't want my head in the way of the shot, so I'm pretty far away, and it's helping me see the big picture. I'm going to use the fan brush very carefully, because this fan brush was kind of misbehaving during the underpainting. I still need to get a new one, just to eliminate some glare. So I'm just going to soften this little edge here. So that brush stroke from before is just not going to cut it. So I'm going to soften and soften. And I'm going to also soften the edge between the upper lip and the flesh tone. Just a little bit of, I'm just pushing a little bit of the flesh tone into this edge. So this painting is just about going to be ready for me to let dry, and then work on it again for the next color pass. I guess I should put the highlight back here for the nose, shouldn't I? Just a little touch of light. Alright, so I'm going to run through a little checklist that I usually do when I'm reworking paintings. So for the center line, I want to make sure that the root of the nose, if I drop a vertical, it lands right here, which here's the root of the nose. It's kind of hard to tell. So the root of the nose is right there, and it has to line up vertically with this point here, being the top middle of the upper lip, and it does. It does seem to work out. So we know that these shapes are arranged properly. The eyes, want to make sure that the angle is still correct. Remember, we wrestled with this before in the transfer drawing. So the angles look good. And remember, I'm not trying to copy the photo reference. I'm never trying to copy. So obviously there are going to be some changes with this painting and the photograph. There are going to definitely be some differences, but that's the whole thing. When you copy something, you get the same thing back. When you interpret something, take in visual information, you create something with it. Now, using going through the process of shape, value, color, anatomy, edge, and trying to work with them to create an image that is realistic in nature or naturalistic. That's really what I want to do. That's what I enjoy about painting. So I guess the next thing I'll do, this edge actually needs to get a little more sharp. So I'm just making this edge a little sharper just to pull focus towards the eye. Might have went too far there. So with the first color pass, edge quality is definitely a thing. Although I do want to keep the edges rather soft, even still. Just because I think, in my opinion, it's always a little more simple to sharpen an edge than to soften one, in my opinion. So I made that a little sharp, a little more sharp than it was before. This edge is sharp. This edge is kind of in the middle. This is like soft and sharp at the same time. So this is probably the most complicated edge. Softer here, sharper here to pull focus towards the lips. Sharper here, even though it's a form that's turning around, sorry, that's a form that's turning around onto the bottom plane of the bulb of the nose. This is intentionally a little sharper, intentionally, because her nose isn't just, or the nose isn't just a round, it's not just a ball, it's a plane change, and it's a little sharper of a plane change. So from here to here, it's a very definitive, kind of like a chop on the model's nose. This is left softer. This is really soft. So I think that the painting is just about ready for me to let it dry. Obviously, I'm going to keep softening things. That's one of my tendencies, just to keep softening edges. So let's just make this a little more soft. So I'm going to go ahead and let this painting dry overnight. I'm going to try to use the same paints. I'll probably just clean this off. So what I do actually is I just take the glass palette and I stick it in a freezer just to save the paints. I'll tell you right away what's not going to be usable is the burnt umber. This is my Winsor Newton burnt umber. I really like this burnt umber. But like I said in the underpainting, burnt umber is a very fast dryer. So this one is probably going to be dry. So that will be replaced. But I think I'll be able to reuse some of these paints tomorrow.